Okay, go ahead. Just go ahead.
Okay, so I'm Samuel Grange. I live in France, and I decided that I would study and do semiotics when I was 17 years old. In my family, I had people who are either artists, creative profile designers, artists, people like that, and I didn't feel creative enough to have such a profession. Or I had people who spend a lot of time studying people behaviors and being basically interested into people and society. And I didn't feel creative enough, yet I didn't want to be disconnected from the creative field. So I looked for different ways to have a more rational and human science-based approaches to work on people and sensitive subjects such as decoration, fashion, style, etc. in general. So I quickly ended up studying semiotics. At that time, there was no real clear path to become a practitioner for commercial semiotics. So I studied marketing and I studied semiotics on my side by reading everything I could. And I quickly spotted Jean-Marie Floch, and I looked for him and I knocked on his door, and I spent years of training and vacation working.
Wait, who? Jurgen Rouge?
Jean-Marie Floch,
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yes.
Floch, and is probably the leading guy in France who created the space, the place for commercial semiotics. So he's the guy who really started working for research, design agencies, advertising agencies, things like that. So this is how I studied semiotics, and I started by working with him, and then working on my own. And I've been working for mainly design agencies and research and agencies for more than 20 years now.
Mainly design, brand design or visual design, graphic design,
Everything, but for the last 10 years, mainly service design, I would say, at least innovation
service
design.
design. Interesting. What is that?
Well, it's when you design a service, you don't necessarily design a space or a product, you design an experience, and taking the experience as a unit of work in itself is key, because what people remember or what is important for them at the end is the experience they're going to go through. And marketing is very poor in terms of having the right tools to design and run an experience, when designers are the one who are actually shaping an experience. So I tend to consider that brand typically is the end result of experiences that you have and not the other way around. So you need to enter through the brands, and the people who are actually active and who change those experiences are the designers. They can be the architects, but the designers are the bunch of guys who have developed the most precise skills in terms of abstraction to run and describe an experience in itself. So that's why, as a semiotician, I do work on positionings and branding and things like that. But I would say that 80% of my activities is about innovation.
Yeah, I remember the theme of the 2017 Talon Semiofest was innovation, wasn't it?
Yes,
Uh,
absolutely.
so then is your talk today, your brief talk, going to be related to that?
Yes,
All right then.
absolutely.
I was going to also say I like to hear it when someone says they want do semiotics because they want to stay in touch with the humanities and the arts. You said that, yeah.
Yes, I definitely.
Because like I was just thinking today, like that's the best thing about studying humanities and therefore about studying semiotics too, although semiotics is a blend of natural science and humanities methods, but it keeps you in touch with humanities. And what humanities do is it keeps you in touch with people. When you just do engineering or whatever, it keeps you in touch with machines and people who are interested in machines. And that brings you into a different life. Yeah.
Yeah, and that brings a key questions, because I often hear that semiotics is not human-centric or user-centric, and I really don't like it when I hear that, and I spend a lot of time fighting back, saying no. Semiotics works on imaginaries and cultural representation that actually influence people. So it's an indirect way to work with people, you know, unlikely to consumer user researchers. We don't torture anybody, yet we really work on who people are, how they think, what are their references, and what is needed to build a shared imaginary. So I think we are really at the center of human-centric, user-centric approaches with semiotics.
Yeah, it's disputed, but from post-humanities side, I know what you're talking about. Some people are definitely trying to take the human out of the picture, and some even move towards a more technocratic view on semiotics. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. So let's keep going. If you have, Tyler, any question during the process, please interrupt me.
I
Don't.
will.
As I said, I spend a lot of time working on innovation, and there's a key thing to understand is if you don't learn anything new about a subject, there's no way you're going to come out with an innovation. So semiotics is part of the learning process, and it's completely necessary. If semiotics doesn't bring you, doesn't feed you with this is the evolutions of the codes of such imaginaries, then it will be difficult to propose something new. So semiotics is key, and it's part of a user human-centric conception. This is what I'm part of. So this is a global overview, just to have, semiotics doesn't exist by itself. So what happens? You have different models, but whatever the model is, you always have a phase to learn. You're going to collect knowledge, and based on that knowledge, you're going to spot opportunities and then create new experiences with those opportunities. Okay, so new ideas will be proposed. And of course, you will interact with users because they will be the referee and they will tell you if you're going to produce any value or not. And once you've identified, consolidated, validated that value, then comes the time to make those solutions, okay? To turn the what into a how. That means finding the right solutions to deliver the experiences that you spotted, okay? Where is semiotics in that global process? It's right at the beginning. It's in the knowledge and gathering, in the exploration phase. And you have to think that usually the user is approached in two main ways. The first one is the usage analysis. What is the reality of what people do? Okay, you need to understand their strategy. What are the pain points? What are the gains? What are the potential shortcuts, etc.? What are their journeys globally, their motivations, things like that. So you have to observe analysis usages. Okay, this is what we do usually with ethnography, and some people go and ask users what they want or whatever, but I don't do that. I'm not part of that process because I think that if you trust what people declare, it's going to be limited. It's better to observe them on one side, and on the other one to analyze what influences them, meaning their imaginaries. If you have to work on the evolution of femininity, of protection, of freshness, of whatever the theme is, there is an imaginary out there, and the codes to embody that imaginary is evolving because when you watch Netflix, when you read a magazine, when you go to see a movie, when you go to see a popular event in your town or whatever, you are influenced. And who is able to analyze those imaginaries and how they're built and how they are expressed? Semiotics. That's why we are part of a process, and along with ethnography to observe usages, semiotics and working on imaginaries is the most important thing. Now, we also have a secondary role, which is making sure once you've spotted something and started to describe what you wanted to do, that you keep delivering what you wanted to, your intention. So the message consistency in terms of encoding can be part of semiotics beauty. Okay, so two different usages, but the main one is the imaginary analysis. So yes, we are part of human sciences. What are the others? Well, we have macroscopic lenses. This is what influence users to do something because they are part of a context. And we have microscopic dimension, which are people's behavior. So when you are at a micro level, what people do at a very small scale, you can use ethnography, psychology, sociology, ergonomics. That's fine. That's basically to understand the reality of their usage. But when you want to have the macro, the big picture of what influences people, you have some trends and dynamics, you have some historical backgrounds, that's fine, but basically everything is embedded into imaginaries, and that's the task of semiotics, which is to explain and understand those dimensions. So what is semiotics? When I get to explain it to client, I usually don't show that, but if I need to go a bit more into details, there's a scope of human sciences, and semiotics or semiology, we call it semio, that's simpler, works on the, of course, the system.
This is interesting. If at some point when you're done, if you have more time, if you say a little bit more about the right side of this spectrum.
Of course. Well, I mean, we can do it right now, but the psychology and sociology works on perceptions of individuals for psychology, or groups for sociology, and there's a big work to be done to reinvent how the role of the groups when you're on a digital culture is quickly evolving. And I think that what we've done so far to research and study those group effects are not sufficient, and we need to reinvent that somehow. We've got ergonomics, which is either medical or cognitive, that works on very small, what makes you go from one step to the other? What is logical? So of course you have some digital usages as well as space issues, for example. Ethnography is the same thing, but at a bigger scale. It's working on the macro usages. I don't know, if I have to move and go to work, I'm going to prepare myself, I'm going to take my bike or my car, I need to get down the stairs with my bike if I live in a big city and I store my bike in my apartment, for example. Then I've got the ride itself, and I've got etc. What are my usages, the reality of my usages, when do I use it, why, where, who for, with, who with, etc. Has to be defined in terms of observation. Then you've got anthropology, which depends on when and in which culture, can be defined as cultural references. So you've got some people who started by studying, societies very far away from our own as cultural models. But after a while, they start, well, we can do it by studying, I don't know, the garbage collecting and how we store our garbage in our own country, for example. Okay, so there's a mix of cultural references and reality of usages. So it starts being different from ethnography. Then you have semiology, which also works on cultural references, but not with the same tools as anthropology. And in the history
That's pretty interesting.
Of semiotics, at least I'll get back to it, but in France, in Italy, it started with semiology. And in the, I don't know, in the 50s, in the 70s, 60s, very often we were dealing with semiology. And at that point, we had people who said that, yes, it's the science of codes. So they did dictionaries of codes. And green means hope. Okay, but when I work as a commercial semiotician in the cheese or yogurt category, when I see grid, it's often related with garlic and herbs. There's no hope in it. So, of course, the meaning, signification is always dedicated to an ecosystem. And green in a given system doesn't mean the same thing as in another system. So semiology was, in France at least, becoming too after Barthes, Roland Barthes, and sometimes Eco, it became the cultural center of interest of being able to talk about some codes, very interesting, but completely disconnected. So in 1957, We had at La Sorbonne the Paris Semiotics Circle that was created, and especially with Lévi-Strauss in terms of anthropology, Benveniste, Barthes, and Greimas. My teacher, who was Jean-Marie Floch, was a student of Greimas. So I know that the semiotics that I apply is an heritage from Greimas.
I see.
Yes.
I see. This is a nice slide. I like this slide.
At least it sets some history. I know it's not true, and it doesn't work the same way in every country, in every culture. The Eastern, Northern Europe has some different schools. Of course, the US, Asia are completely different. But when it comes to France, that's the history that we have, at least. So what does it do? And then we start talking in terms of commercial semiotics, how we're talking about it. As I've just said, you need a system to avoid working in green in general. You need either a group of things to be analyzed, okay? And that group of things is key, and it will determine what you'll find. So we need a corpus, okay, for semiotician. But what kind of corpus? Okay, I'll get back to it now. When you see a sign in itself, I mean, if we take chocolate can be associated to indulgence, energy, guilt. It's various, okay? So that's a good example to say that there's no such thing as a single monolithic meaning associated with one code, even if it's a complex code. So what are the contexts? The first context that you can get is the competitive category, okay? If I have to work on a new drink, should I pick the, I don't know, fruit juices? But what about waters? What about sparkling waters? What about non-alcoholic drinks like beer or whatever? Where do I stop and where do I begin? Okay, that's one of the questions that we have. And the answer that I could give you is the more you work on a brand question, the more narrow is your competitive category, because you want to make sure that you are meaningful and very coherent and different from your closest competitors. Now, if you work on an innovation project, it's more interesting to have a broader scope and having a broader product category.
This is interesting about the future of commercial semiotics. I think it's directly related.
Yeah, and the more you have some blurry definitions of product categories, especially in the digital area, the more the question of, yeah, but what is the corpus right at the beginning? And it is, to me, the question you're trying to solve, either a positioning or innovation issue, that helps you shape that corpus. Now, another key dimension that we have regarding our system is, okay, but do I work only on France? But then what about Europe? What about Asia, the US? So it depends on the countries, of course, but what are you looking for? And are you looking for commonalities, shared answer to those countries, or are you looking for all the local differences that makes it, specific? And how broad is your field of analysis is one thing, but even though you're not working for all those countries, you have cultures that are considered as advanced. So as a source of inspiration, I don't know, if I want to be working on parenting, education, maybe working on Scandinavian country will be interesting, even though my market for potential service has nothing to do with Scandinavian countries. Okay, so once again, the geography, the cultural limits of your corpus is part of defining the right system. Now you have a third one, which is far more tricky, which is the dynamic timeline. Usually when we work with semiotics, we do a picture, we do an analysis at a present time. Okay, but what is the dynamic behind it? That's today, but what are the emerging codes of tomorrow? And then it starts being more complicated. And what semiotics has developed, I mean, I've learned it in with my British fellow semioticians, to work on residual, dominant, and emergent codes. The first time I heard it, I said, wow, you have such a big database that on any subject you can dive like in a museum and find what are the oldest codes and the freshest one. No. Okay, so to me, I'll get back to it, but that's one of the weakness in terms of methods of semiotics is when we're talking about dynamics, it becomes more subjective because my corpus, it's difficult to find, illustration of everything that is dated and everything that is emergent.
Right. So unpack that idea. Just one or two more sentences about that.
Yeah. Usually you reach, you obtain people's acknowledgement of, yeah, okay, it makes sense. That code is dated. I used to see it when I was younger, for example. I've seen it for ages. So yeah, okay. When you describe it, you have people, knocking and say, yeah, it's true. Those are the main ones, okay. And those I don't know them. So yes, they're emerging. They're brand new. There's a new I don't know, concept store that came out, a new magazine, the latest movie, and here are new ways to express something. So it is the historical dimension of codes that allows you to show that dynamic. But so
it's like about like confusing newness with actual dynamicity.
Well, it's I've got many clients who are mainly interested by what are the new codes of what are, whatever the subject is, because they want to remain updated or in advance or whatever. But to me, there's always a limit to it because very often it's you could use the other way around. I'm spotted some dated codes and I can reinvent them so that they would become new again. And it's a design work process somehow, but okay, here are the old dated codes. And by switching them, I show that I'm not being passive, but it's a reinvention something, and I make them new again. So only trying to capture the dominant and emergent one, because this is usually what we do, as a limit, and we can do a creativity work to reinvent older codes.
Yeah,
So
and I can see how other marketing, like non-semiotic marketing, maybe like doesn't focus enough on the residual. It's a neglect of history, and that this is like a reinforcement of like a late capital logic or industrialized cultural industry or whatever. Raymond Williams.
Absolutely. Usually brands ask for a mix of dominant and emergent codes, because if you only pick emergent codes, they might be too, you don't know if they will become tomorrow's dominant one. You're taking a big risk. If you're only using dominant codes, then it's too late somehow. It's not worth it. So you have a mix to secure yourself. But that's one way to look at it. And I prefer the other way, saying which one are, regardless of the time dynamic, the most interesting one for you guys. And we will reinvent their expressions to make sure that they are fresh again, which is a different way to look at it. Now, in terms of method, you have to keep in mind that how do we spot them? I'll get back to it. Doesn't matter, we're here. So the dominant codes are usually expressed by brands. So by analyzing some marketed codes, ads, packaging, design, websites, etc., you have the dominant codes of the moment if you work on the main brands of the field. Now, who is challenging the dominant codes of the society? Punks. Okay, so punk culture is key because this is where you will find rebellion, okay, and rebellious codes. So art, entertainment, gaming are the main area where I look for emergent codes, because I know I'll find people, NGOs, etc., that are alternative to the normed society, and they're spotting a limit to the norms, and they're proposing something else. Now, their proposition might be too far away, interesting enough or whatever, but they're spotting something. And that's very interesting because based on that, with that thing that is emerging, you can work on it and make it potentially more acceptable and therefore help bringing some innovative stories. Okay, so it's the most commercially, almost the most interesting things about semiotics, yet it's the weakest one in terms of methodology, in terms of backing it up, science, where does it come from? How do we work with it? So typically for me, in terms of university and research, there's a huge field of exploration to be done. Now, what are we doing as semiotician? Well, we play, the game of these 7 differences. We spend our days doing that. So there are different levels. I mean, we have, saussure, meaning comes from the difference. Well, we have to spot differences, and there's a jungle out there. So how do we do it? The easiest way for me to explain it is like a Big Mac, okay? You take an hamburger, 3 main layers, and every time you're dealing with, with some manifestations of codes, with a new space, new object, new add, new anything you want, you have to apply that process. This is probably one of the most important things for me to explain semiotics to my clients. What makes you, as a semiotician, more entitled to tell me what it means? The generative path, okay, Greimas and Cortes. And for anything you're dealing with, you have codes, okay, manifestations of code. So you have everything which is aesthetic, color, material, shapes, layout. We can put the media. I mean, it's a simplified path, okay? I know it can be far more complex with 5 different levels, whatever, but what people have to understand that you have codes. Even if you go to Japan and you hear people, they can yell at each other, you don't get what they do, unless you speak Japanese, but otherwise you don't understand what they say yet. You understand that something goes wrong, they shout, they whatever, okay? So those are codes. Then you have the discursive level, okay? You have stories with themes, characters, situations, motivations, interactions, and we have several tools to work on those discursive levels. Fine. And then you have values or semio-narrative levels for us, which is basically the vision of the world, the purpose, the reason of being of that thing. And there's some association between those 3 layers. And the basic of semiotics is to reveal those associations. And it is the recurrency of those associations. Every time I talk about, yogurt brands that are talking about tradition, they use, serif typeface, serif fonts. They use golden or brownish colors or things like that. Okay, so here I'm making a connection between it used to be better before, tradition.
Those little details, stuff like that about serif and sans serif and like how it relates to the kinds of emotions that typefaces are conveying. That's why I like interacting with the people that are involved in marketing.
Yeah. I mean, it's key and it's easy to spot them and to show them those elements. And it's the recurrency of those associations that create a pattern to explain a market, a pattern to explain differences of expressions for a cultural theme. So that generative path, the Big Mac for my clients, is the thing that allows us as semiotician to explain what something means. Okay, something complex. Yes, we've analyzed it, and guess what? There are some recurrences, and this is what happens. And we can map whatever you want. For example, if you take Ronald McDonald's, okay, in terms of colors, in terms of codes, a lot of bright contrasted colors, the red, the white stripes, the yellow outfit, and explosive shapes is not, steel is, it's coming from the center to the external. So it's stretching in several directions, and it's a realistic photo. Okay. In terms of discourses, I do recognize a clown. Why? He has a red nose, he has big shoes, and he's not dressed as a civilian. He has an overall suit. Okay, he's costumed, and he's quite pleasant and happy in a dynamic position. And in terms of values, well, the clown has the right to be transgressive. Okay, it's the equivalent of a king's fool. So he can break the rules. He can mock adults. Okay, so as a character, for a restaurant, that means it's in a restaurant where adults rules won't apply, but it's more kids rules that will apply. So therefore, you can eat with your hands, you can have places to play and things like that. Okay, but that's the mechanism of a Big Mac, the generative path, of course, that helps you explain what it means. So then, I make them try, I make them, we take the, what's up, what's new, and let's talk about it. Let's analyze it without having a subjective point of view, and we can talk about anything. I also show them that, in Greimas semiotic culture, it's a
Don't mean to interrupt. I apologize, but if you at the end, like after your talk's done and the topics you want to talk about, you're done with to your satisfaction. If you want to say anything about modality and gray moss, if you've had any thoughts ever about modality and gray moss, then you can do that too. But thank you. Go on, continue.
Okay. Paradigmatic semiotics is key. The value, the semionarrative dimension of the Big Mac. We are organizing values here. Of course, depending on the nature of the paradigms, we can design things differently. It's only a question of design. How do you represent the diversity of meanings associated to a market or a cultural theme? Okay, so usually we use the semiotic square when things are very exclusive, okay? Between life and death, there's not that many things that stands in between. But between cold and hot and the other way around, you have tons of variations. So, the traditional cross of the mapping is far more useful to spot things that are in between. But what about when you have different paradigms? Then, well, do we have to only stick two and semiotician can only think with two paradigms? And what about if there's more? Then we need to invent other models. So I call it the Chinese portrait, and I can show figures and spot things in different paradigms, which help me compare whatever I need to compare and the semionarrative dimension. And by the way, there are many questions raised by commercial semiotics about, is the paradigmatic culture only valuable in the Western culture, but what about Asia? If you think about, Japan, China, India, which is even different, are you still looking for paradigms? And my personal experience is, yes, you are, but you don't use them the same way. In Europe, typically, we tend to oppose things and to make them very different and very clear. But if you think about, I don't know, yin and yang.
Wait. So you're talking about like a process versus structure and in terms of East versus West, yeah?
Exactly.
Oh shit. Well, okay, continue.
Yeah. If you think about positioning and how different things need to be, for example, we are looking for exclusion in Europe. But very often in Asia, you're trying to reconcile things. Yin yang, things in between, avoiding to take positions. Then my question was, are paradigms still helpful and still valuable? And my own experience is yes, even if you want to rebalance things, to reconcile things, you still have to identify what makes them opposite at the beginning. So looking for paradigms when you're working on Asian culture is still necessary. Now, what you do with that, the proposition that comes out after your analysis in terms of recommendations, for example, are different. So that was an interesting cultural path for myself to go through those questioning.
And you derived that conclusion from empirical research or from your philosophical endeavors, or both?
I've never met anyone to share those comments at a theoretical level. So if you want to work on it,
it may be there. Yeah.
Then at the discursive level, we have the narrative path that I'm sure you know. It's based on Prop, the Russian linguist, if I'm right, who analyzed all the fairy tales in Russia and realized it was always the same scheme, basically. So I'm using a story that I made up and to show my client that there is potentially a contract, competency, performance, and appraisal. I'll get back to it with an example applied on a project, but semiotics is also helpful not only to structure things, but to structure stories in terms of, okay, but what about, how are we going to tell that story? What with, what if the logo addresses, part of it, and what about the, I don't know, shopping bag, the space, whatever. You can think about how you divide the tasks of telling a story through the different tools that the brands can activate, and what makes at the end an experience.
I think some of these ads, they're really the subtle ones, the ones that are real sneaky. It's like they start a process before explicitly engaging a signification system.
Absolutely, and more, I would say, and the more you look at them in in Instagram stories or things like that, and the more tricky they get in terms of analysis, because it's a longer and more subtle process than a one big poster in the street. Okay, so the more it's animated, the more it's part of a movie, the more it gets more difficult for us to analyze, but at least it's fun. So I've got two main subjects that I can work on. One is brand related, everything that relates to positioning, brand differentiation, brand's coherency, and it's about analyzing a market globally and showing, which how the competitors are, are part of it, what makes you different, what is your singularities, and how you can, make a living out of it by standing for something which is specific. But we also work at a more microscopic level of all the brand vectors, okay? The ads, the pack, the website, the sales pitch, etc., internal culture, the headquarter, the the director's pitch, all the supports, basically, working on currency differentiations, okay? We can also work on comparing what is aimed, meaning the copy strategy. When a brand wants to communicate something, we can analyze the intention. We can analyze what is said through the brand vector, whatever it is, and we can analyze, meaning position, at least what is perceived. Of course, we depend on our fellow researchers in terms of psychology to give basically the consumer research results about how people perceived it, but you can still position it so that you can compare the three, and that's interesting. You can also work with ethnography in a space, for example, to see the ethnographer will work on what is people behavior in that space. How are they behaving? And you can analyze why they have such behaviors. What is from the space that makes them have this behavior? So when you're working on a new, I don't know, food place, whatever, that's something that that can be interesting. And of course, you can produce stimulus for qualitative, quantitative pieces of research. So it's basically looking like that. It's brands don't exist by themselves. They have competitors, they have categories, and there's culture that shapes that category. Okay. Another
I like that last diagram you put up there, because the way that it puts competitors before culture, it shows you something about what kind of marketing works.
Yeah.
What you're really got to think about. And I think this is a very communications oriented approach to marketing, as opposed to like a signification approach.
The other entry point, which is my favorite and the one I spend most time working on, is related to a cultural theme, okay? So it's understanding the evolution of codes of, I don't know, care, simplicity, nature, community, transgression, nutrition, femininity, whatever. Because this is where you have to be innovative, a brand, an actor, state, government, whoever, the army will have to come out with something new about what makes it interesting for them. Okay, but that means what are the new codes to express, simplicity or community transgression or whatever? New beer for young adults. Okay, transgression will be key. How does it evolve? What are the new ways to express transgression? How do you understand transgression and the different types of transgression? So of course, in terms of corpus, it's always difficult because you have to collect many things and it's never over. So at one point you have to stop when you feel that you have saturated, the world of possibilities. But it's what it takes to be able to work on those cultural themes and find new expressions so that you can inspire innovation process. Okay, so that's working on what influences people. Transgression in series, in video games. This is where you will find the new codes of transgression more than by looking at I don't know, beers ads, for example. Okay. And in that way, you have the marketed culture that, as I said, sorry, they are shaping the norms. Then you have the popular culture. This is where you have things that are more emergent, and the international culture, because you can do it in your country, but you can get inspiration that new things that are happening. I don't know if you're working on beauty, South Korea will be interesting, for example. So getting there to show what is emerging. Of course, asking a South Korean semiotician is faster and easier. So another facets of semiotics is recoding, meaning, okay, we have to build something. What are the codes to actually do it? An example that I did for Narciso Rodriguez was analyzing all his fashion shows for several years and explaining what his fashion was about, to making sure it was very classic outside and very baroque inside. So the brief for the designers was, well, design a bottle which has classical codes outside, meaning referring to the Chanel #5 with squared shoulders, and be baroque inside, so an organic shape with no angle showing from the outside. And that was their proposition, which was actually great. So as a semiotician, I don't create anything. Designers do, but I can define the materials that they have to play with. So I remain at a rational level and deliver that rational level so that they can be creative with this material. What are the limits of semiotics, and especially commercial semiotics currently? As I said, residual, dominant, emergent. Okay, how do we avoid being too subjective about the history of codes? Can we do anything about it? That's a big question mark. Big data. Yes, we do have software to analyze complex and the more AI, sorry, in English, is developing, is growing, the more we'll get closer to it. Yet, so when we're dealing with big corpus, it's fine. But so far, we're lacking of subtlety, being satiric, humor, things like that, everything related to second degrees. We don't know yet how to analyze it, but we will. So at one point, probably. So there's a question about how we do consider this, this kind of competition somehow, with especially, the capacity to analyze what is said about, I don't know, feminism in social network, and having the capacity to cover such grounds. So in fact, instead of fearing that competition, there's one thing that semioticians should do is make sure that we are on board of artificial intelligence developments. Because this is important that we do as professionals of meaning, that we are on board to define those such tools. And at last, the international dimension is also key. When I said that I'm working in China, in the US, etc., I need a local semiotician. And the thing is, there's no such thing as an international definition of how we do semiotics. So sometimes there's more differences between two semioticians than their cultural references. So I know 20 years ago, when I was working in Japan, I had to find someone in Japan, but like most of the time I couldn't find any semiotician. So I wanted someone who was capable to understand the local culture, of course, Japanese, and explaining it to me like a regular human science, like qualitative profile. And I would do the semiotic analysis, And then that person would validate what it meant culturally, that it was adapted to the local culture. So that made me travel all around the world, and which was stupid in terms of carbon consumption. But at that time, we didn't care that much. And in order to analyze different cultures and be able to compare. Of course, it's over. And now what we do is we try to find people who are basically with the same references in terms of semiotics methods. And we do work internationally and then converge in order to compare local specificities. But it's still a question, and it will remain one as long as we don't have any international professional association to define international standards. So SemioFest is the closest thing that we have so far to be there, but there's still some work to be done. Now, what I can do is I can show you an example of, with a cultural theme. So I picked, I don't know, chilling out as an example, and it's chilling out can be either escaping, it's about escaping reality. I'm having a break. I want to, make a break in my day and escape reality, or dealing with reality, but dealing with it differently from what I do usually. And I can have, I can have a retreat posture, being more
This is
passive.
very nice. I like this.
Or on the other way around, I can have, my break, my chilling out moment will be very much involved with a more active mind. So we do have shelter as the idea of protecting yourself from an aggressive and meaningless world. Okay, you want to remote yourself, so you escape reality in a very passive, and you enter into a sort of retreat. You have a liberation process, which is escaping the world, but by being very active. It's enjoying a responsibility-free activity to escape social rules. I can be naked, screaming, and whatever, and yeah, because usually I can't do that in the street. Okay, so that's still a moment to chill out. Now, if I get on the dealing with reality side, I can try, it's a moment for inspiration. It's the opportunity to change yourself and to reconnect with a meaningful world, because maybe your everyday life isn't about it, but you don't want just to forget about it. You want to do something, and it's a moment to get inspiration because you can't usually do it. And the last one is about compassion. So it's more emerging, actually, but it's accepting your fragility. And it's also feeding yourself with adrenaline by mocking others, watching others, at least having curiosity for others, that somehow shows you how different or how lucky you are, or things like that. So the procuration is very dated somehow. It's been existing forever. As soon as you read magazines about the royal families or things like that, it's already compassion. But sharing your fragility to feel better is more emergent. And if you look at social network, especially the youngest generation, eco-anxiety, things like that makes them connect. And by sharing that I feel down currently or whatever, I get people say, yeah, me too. And we get to connect, and it's good to share that also. So fragility is
This
okay.
is precisely what I meant when I posed my question about modalization. And it's not precisely a Greimasian square, but still, like, the idea of the Greimas is he's trying to impose more than one axis on a system which tends to operate on a single axis. And so if you were to throw down yet another axis here and say the euphoric to dysphoric, I guess, pole, and this is the one that's going to be shifting. I guess this is the one that's up to the user in a sense. And they were modalizing a concept. That concept is chilling out. Yeah.
Exactly. And the reason why I use most of the time those mappings instead of semiotic square is when I have 10 minutes to explain a CEO, what his universe or what he has to work on works. I don't want to spend half of the time explaining how a semiotic square works, but the structure behind it is still the same. So then we have territories of expressions. The semiotician's role is to give the key to a complex question to his clients, to his teammates, to whoever. Okay, so starting with a structure, it's a complex question, chilling out. You have tons of manifestation of it. You want to understand the big chunks and making clearer. this is how it works. The first question you have to ask yourself is it about escaping reality or dealing with it? Okay, and those tensions, those paradigms help structuring things. Now, you get down at a smaller level, smaller scale, with territories of expressions. For each of them, you have different entry point, different kind of stories, different types of codes. Okay, so you identified them. And I can show you some example with soft and slow, for example. Okay, soft and slow is part of shelter. And then you have a vision, okay, the semionarrative dimension to face the pressure of a chaotic world. Luxury offers, or luxury on everything else, offers the capacity to slow down and to create a comfy cocoon that works as a barrier, okay? The world can be seen as an aggression, and absorbers are needed to refocus on yourself or what matters most to you. What are the specific themes of soft and slow? Silence, no intrusions, no pollution, slowness, absent of technology, pressing pause, the capacity to disconnect, to slow down, to get back to real choices and no emergencies, smoothness with the opposition of performance, the regressive capacity to let go, to forgive, to drop defenses, hidden identities, things you don't want to reveal to others. Contemplation also, happiness, lies under your eyes. So it's just a question of vision of the world. So in that case, chilling here is letting go once you feel protected. How is it expressed? With still life, static postures, hidden faces, fluffy, thick, quilted, curved shapes and texture, horizontal, laid back postures, floating effects. What are the key moments when it is activated? Well, it's clearly the barrier that matters with the outside. It's a welcoming zone at home. It's a pressure-free, comfy presence, fear of strangers. This is what it reveals. So if you want to build it, it has to be a digital free space, moments when you don't feel exposed, being in a furtive mode, not being able to be recognized outside. Okay, so this is about letting go without feeling guilty and related to the lack of efforts. Okay, so pajamas, pizza, blanket, all those regressive vectors will be key. You can show specific brands, like in France, you have one which is called La Pantoufle à Pépère, and well, I won't spend too much time on it, but it's carrying your own protection zone like a talisman to avoid being ridiculous without any efforts, okay? So chilling here is the authorization to drop the fear of social judgment. Okay, and then you can switch from, social screen, which is another type of shelter. I'm not going to be touched. I'm at a remote level, so I'm not going to spend too much time in details with the different brands that do activate it. Okay, like Uber Eats, for example. Satisfying, okay, everything which is dealing with SMR is another kind of being remote. Okay, so shots of indulgence sensation. Okay, the sensorial pleasure at enrich to create strong immediate effects in real life hook that takes us back into the physiological truth of our animality. In a world that seems often meaningless, the sensation, satisfaction is an immediate reward that can absorb attention, tensions to balance our moods. It could be also a substitute to sex for the latest generations. We can see at least the correlation between when these phenomena appear and their behaviors. So in terms of themes, we have 5 optimized senses stimulus, the perfect action, perfect size, the art of doing something right, a trigger to attract and absorb your attention and being under hypnosis. Meditative state of mind, peaceful, fulfilling a strong need linked to your animality, your instinct. So in that case, chilling here is an intense source of sensation with, a lot of close-up, slowness, mini sizes, quiet environment, precise gesture, geometric shapes in terms of codes. And here we go with the narrative path. If I were, for example, to build a place like a urban daily outing club based on that theory of expression, okay, in terms of contract, that would be absorbing the excess of stress to release the pressure. The competency is a place isolated from the outer world with a path of various sensorial stimulus. And for performance, it's being focused, absorbed, thanks to slow, soft, hypnotic gestures and environments before switching to a more invigorating stimulus. And the appraisal would be feeling reset, rebalance, ready to face a rough urban world. So what I've done here is I've taken the satisfying territory of expression, saying, okay, if I have to make up a story based on that for a urban outing club, an example of what it could be would be that. And here I know that, okay, how am I going to communicate the contract, the appraisal, the competency, the performance? And if I have to do a logo about it, what would it be, etc. But I already have a pattern of story that I can use and that I can start discussing with my clients before we get to.
So now we're doing some Greimasian narratology.
Exactly. Exactly. Of course, you have brands like McDonald's that have been using that satisfying dimension for an immediate sensorial satisfaction. Voyeurism, completely different. Okay, it's when you look at I don't know, chefs competitions of dating challenges on TV, on the internet, or on TikTok, or whatever, or even martial art fighting or everything like that. It's a way to disconnect. It's a way to chill out. Okay, it's not you. You are being outside of the scene and then you look at it. Okay, so it's turning fragility, shame, failures, ridiculous situations, dangers for the others into a source of personal satisfaction. It provides the feeling that you are superior, better, or that stars, famous people are quite like us at the end. So, danger, ridiculous, talents, bad luck, stars, things like that. So chilling here is an occasion to put your situation into perspective. Well, not so bad. It was a good break. I had fun and I could realize that my work is okay, for example. So a lot of competition, medals, winners, you have to, you need ceremonials for suspense. So portraits, close-up, intimate wording.
These are really my favorite shows, I have to say. They're just the best because they tell us so much. That's why.
Yeah. And in order to work there, you need codes of proximity. So that's interesting in terms of how people whisper as you have the feeling that you are in their head or whatever. They manage to build that proximity. Okay, that's one way to chill out. Red Bull, for example, works, plays, activate two dimensions. One, which is voyeurism, and you look at the most craziest guys ever doing stupid things. So as a shoot of adrenaline, but it's also supporting you when you do maybe not so dangerous things, but yet you have to be supported. So they work on both sides. So if I take the same exercise on voyeurism and trying to apply it to a urban outing club, then the contract would be forgetting your everyday worries and feeling alive. So it's a place in terms of competency isolated from the outer world, showing a challenges program attached to a professional sport, talent, arty, intellectual. Could have fights of semioticians in a place like that. So confrontations between two protagonists, rising the suspense of who is going to win on the other. And the performance is a projection on a preferred candidate with appropriation of risk, doubts, pleasures, proud. So it's a roller coaster of moods and emotion. And the appraisal would be, I'm washed away by high levels of adrenaline, the feeling of a special day, avoiding the usual, ready to get back to a more rational life. Okay. So this, well, I could go on with comforting, copying, with whatever, but I'll have to stop at one point. But this is
No, continue until you're done. Yeah, take the time that you.
okay. So yeah, coping strategies, and when I was talking about fragility, you some weaknesses, and willing to share that, you have more and more manifestation of people who feel depressed, who make fun, who just share that. You have shows, events about let's come together for a depression night, and having people to make fun, to compensate, to things like that, and let's pay a tribute to feeling down, feeling blue, for example. So we have things like that, and so everything, many things happen at the digital level, but it's part of chilling out. And in that case, chilling out is a moment to overcome difficult emotions. Okay. Typically, Mythic is an actor. It's a matching app, and they're advertising about our own weaknesses, saying it is our weaknesses that make people connect. Because if you're trying to be perfect, you'll be like anyone else, basically. So you're turning a weakness into a strength. So chilling here is accepting that your weaknesses could become attractive, interesting, stepping away from the pressure of
I got an
perfect.
idea for a new app. Do you want to hear
Yeah, go
it?
ahead.
So like, Tinder and such. I got friends that use Tinder back home, and well, what we learn, what I've heard from them anyway, is that basically what they get there is a lot of rejection.
Yeah.
And so I've seen some apps make, I mean, some uh, little reels and such, gifs, I guess they're called, making a meme out of this idea. And it's just like a girl has her Tinder open and she's got this like automated wheel that's just like swiping. What is it? You swipe left to reject someone. I don't remember. I don't know. Swipe right, swipe left. One of them. Anyway, it's just an automated wheel that like swipes, like it just maximizes the rejection rate basically. And that's what guys are getting basically. They're getting on there. And so I'm going to design an app that kind of like simplifies the process, right? And then, so like it just turns on in the morning and it does like a photo of your face and it automatically generates some kind of insult for you. We can call it Slap Factory. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Continue.
Yeah, it's a good one. Recharging, how do you restore yourself? Chilling out. So we're getting down, okay? And here it's, how do you quit work, stress to get recharged. So not working so much and spending time doing nothing, or things that connects with nature and who you are. Unlocking who you are becomes possible thanks to that. So ruptures with the working world, with capitalism, enjoying the moment for what it is, the art of doing nothing. Humans are part of nature, listening to your body, connecting yourself with your potentials, things like that. So chilling here is a moment to reconnect with your inner power and not being influenced by the others, by your work. So a lot of introspection, self-confidence, switching wording, changes, revelations, independency of mind, suspended time, and heart expression, body as a language. Okay. Typically, well, that's a typical French brand as a drink that pays a tribute to laziness. Okay, it's the art of doing nothing, basically, and chilling here is accepting that doing nothing is pleasant. It's turning a default into a source of satisfaction thanks to humor. Okay. Mindful, chilling out is a moment when you pause and you're going to regain control, because the rest of the day is being chaotic. Here, it's a very loud world. It prevents from being yourself. So the capacity to refocus on yourself, to listen to your priorities, to question your instincts, desires, to make the right decisions. So being focused, isolated, retreats from the world, meditation, decision about what matters, learning to control your feeling, detachment from the material world, cult of wisdom, of kindness, emptiness, few belongings, minimalism, small is smarter. So chilling here is the absence of disturbing extraneous, externals. Typically, Typology as a skincare brand is trying to remove everything else. Saying, it's a cream, it's a skincare. That's all. Yeah, that's all you have to know. So chilling here is keeping control of your life, of your environment, not losing time with meaningless concerns. Spiritual disconnection, okay, chilling out, re-enchantment. So the world is often meaningless, and reconnecting with others, with nature, where you belong, to be part of the Odyssey. So breaking the everyday to celebrate potential alternative. This is a space of ritual and of wellness, and it's often the opposition of self-improvement, actually, that we've just seen, which there is an idea of performance somehow, when here there isn't any. It's removing all aspect of performance. So festivals, gathering in a consumption-free universe, alternative lifestyle, raves, outdoor music parties, yoga, hiking, art, thing like that. It's finding a better, truer yourself. Okay, it's free autonomous zones for chilling. So chilling here is reaffirming a meaning in life. With a lot of collective celebration, rough outfits, poetry wording, escaping rationality, body involvement into rituals, new age, naive representations, things like that. And well, yeah, Volvic as a mineral water brand is offering to reconnect with things that pre-existed to manhood. So chilling here is an occasion to reconnect with your origin, with your true nature, which is a sort of spirituality. Very different, wheeling back to the left, hypnotic ends. So it's disconnecting your mind by keeping your hands busy. So distressing, rebalancing to escape the pressure. It's about agility, speed, sensations to absorb mental tensions. Okay, so playing with numbers, with shapes, with colors, with textures. It's automatic gestures. There's some monotypes here, hypnotic effects, contemplative, and potentially contribution to something which is bigger. So chilling here is physically and mentally absorbing stress. So a lot of geometric constructions, kids, toys alike, mini actions that shape something bigger. Ends in motion, showing ends is important, and a rhythm that can be paused but is otherwise repetitive. Typically it's a cheese brand and you're playing the external packaging is wax, so you're playing with it. So chilling here is an occasion to forget about adults' frustrating world and to experience a simpler, regressive moment. And it's also about feeling creative, chilling out as a moment for creativity, for having fun. So life is a playground, and it's an opportunity to twist reality. So if reality is too serious, and being creative to create wonders and humor is a good way to escape responsibility. So becoming whoever I want to be, costumes, creating characters, different identities, it's customization, self-expression, animation in a public space, humor to switch the environments, jokes, pranks, connections with characters and universes from, typical from a specific generation. So chilling here is about connecting to a childlike sense of self. And, I used to do it when I was a kid. I'm a grown-up now. Well, yeah, I still need moments to chill out and behave like a kid and do stupid things. So be creative in terms of not responsible, not rational. Okay, so cartoonish and colorful tones, superpositions of personalities, confrontations, contrast between reality and fantasy. It's moments to become someone else for a while. Okay, changing your environment. You accept to change it for a while. Typically, Lego is playing the capacity, but even for grown-up to be creative and invent it. So it's a break. So chilling here is a moment of emancipation to become who you want to be, to turn the world into what you want it to be. And many chilling out moments actually happen into gaming, into playing. So it's a parallel life. There's no connection compared to the previous one. There's no connection with reality. And here you're escaping it by choosing completely different identity, completely different universe. Many things are possible compared to reality. And there's somehow a second chance to be happy, to succeed, to live great adventures. So very immersive world, world of fantasies, different characters, different gameplay, anonymity, you're becoming someone else, and teammate potentially, so easy socialization because there's no consequences in real life. So chilling here is escaping reality, thanks to fantasy, naive characters with unreal proportions, high-tech effects like light halo, 3D dynamic effect, unreal, surreal, futuristic decors and equipments. And typically, BetClick, who is a betting app, allows people to escape reality and to become part of a football gaming in order to bet. So you forget who you are and you are projected into another different universe. So chilling here is a moment to escape reality, boredom, and access to virtual excitement. Well,
Here we face, I think, an important, I don't know, dilemma when it comes to the automation of the sensorial experience, especially as it dovetails with the automation of advertising, like targeted advertising, and the way that incentivization to keep playing, let's say, is built into the system, especially as it begins to involve pay to play or pay to upgrade kind of systems. And of course, gambling is kind of the precursor of this. But when you said that, well, we need to watch we have to have obligation to watch the AI. Yes, I agree with you to a certain extent. Yes.
Yeah, it's been around for a long time, but we know that there's a question of generation of technology. So far, all the software who wanted to analyze large corpus were limited in terms of intelligence to build something. Now, what is happening currently with IA is switching the game, and I don't know whether it's gonna, how efficient it's gonna be. So we'll always need semiotician to question the meaning of our world. But in terms of analyzing large corpus, it might become interesting. So I personally see it as a tool. I'm already using IA for recoding. So when I've worked on I don't know, a brand universe, I work for many luxury brands, for example. When I work on a specific team and I have to rebuild something, I'm using their codes and virtual, creative tools to come up with a new image, to a new identity, for example. So using the IA at that time is key for me because I can illustrate what I mean. And
Yeah, I understand. I'll continue this conversation with you after I stop recording, but before I do, I want to ask you if that was your last slide.
yes,
And it was Samuel Grange. And
yes.
tell us again, once again, the name of your company or organization and where it is and what you do and what the website is, etc. Give us a little plug.
A company is the Semiotics factory, but there's only me in it, so it's not really a company.
Well, I'm not sure that that's really the definitive criteria, but criterion.
I'm based in France, but I work for international project worldwide and doing innovation work or positioning works. I've got no website. I usually work for several agencies or big companies that I know directly. I'm not specialized in any area, any fields. I've worked in most of them that do exist. And I've been doing it for more than 20 years
So
now.
then it was the Semiotics factory, right?
Semiotics Factory, just the name of the company is specialized on it, but
Cool. But
it's
that's
it
your company, yeah?
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. And it's basically like the logo is very cool. Like that's of course what attracted me at first. It makes me think of Pink Floyd's Animals immediately, but it's obviously not. It's the opposite of Pink Floyd Animals because it's one smokestack instead of four smokestacks. Yeah. Obviously you're from UK, right? Or no, you're in France, of course. But
No,
I think of UK immediately when I think commercial semiotics. That's why I automatically classed you there. But you know about Pink Floyd.
yeah, but yeah.
Is that, I mean, did that have something to do with your thinking in the logo?
No,
Really?
it could, but if you look at the chimney, there are some squares coming out
True.
and things coming out from it because it's what I produce is basically structuring meanings. So that was a way to illustrate it. But no, I'm
I
based in.
had this like super complex semiotic analysis, and I'm like, Jesus, this man is genius. And I was confirmed by your lecture. Actually, that lecture was brilliant. It was much more than I expected. So I'm just gonna do the little emoji celebration thing right there, and then I'm just gonna hit